So, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Domits podcast. And today we, of course, have pretty much the second host at this point in time,
It's the one and only. It's Giel. Welcome back.
and yours truly, Dan, here as well. So, today we're going to be chatting about dynamic pricing. So, he'll tell me what's dynamic pricing? What does it do?
Well, dynamic pricing, good question. Dynamic pricing basically means getting the right price for the right room, for the right guest at the right time. So, of course, it's also about where the room is listed and where it shows up. But of course, one of the most important things for a guest to book a room is an affordable price and a price that seems realistic. So basically, what dynamic pricing means is balancing the price of a room compared to others on the market, compared to what season we're in, high season, low season, what's the location, are there any events nearby? I think that's the main thing behind dynamic pricing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And then, what do you think about what's the main factors nowadays with dynamic pricing algorithms? Like, what exactly do you look for? Which analysis do you do to kind of understand what do you consider for dynamic pricing? Like, which price actually goes?
I think for dynamic pricing, we do different rate plans. So you can choose per listing whether you have a stricter rate plan. So you have a normal price for every night, and it doesn't really change at all. You can choose rate plans, for example, on, like I said, seasonal.
Yeah.
So, for example, if it's Christmas, you'll ask more or less.
Yeah.
During holidays, you can do it based on sporting events. Like, for example, here in Holland, we have the Formula One Grand Prix. Well, during the Grand Prix, hotels near the area, they are unaffordable.
A lot of people. That's true.
So yeah, I think it depends on a lot of factors, and I think as the more factors you include, the better the pricing will be. And I also think a lot of people might might underestimate how much money they can actually ask for a room, and it will still be fully booked.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will have a general price and it will be fully booked, and they'll be like, okay, this works. But I think a lot of people could up the prices and still make the same amount of money, get the same, or make more money and keep the same occupancy.
Yeah, and also occasionally, I think a lot of people, whenever they do business and they either just start or they're not as experienced, they just keep it on one level, so they don't even go for dynamic pricing because they think that it would be like maybe a little too much for others, and they wouldn't book it because of the certain price. But then, so adjusting for an on and off season, for example, if you can analyze, especially at Domits, right, we also can do dynamic pricing for property managers and for property owners. But pretty much for example, I think we analyzed demand signals, kind of competitors' data as well. So then seeing events and weather and day of the week kind of patterns. So as you said, with the Formula One, that's kind of an event, and then you kind of analyze the current market, and then you propose a change to.
I think dynamic pricing is like layered. You have a lot of different levels you can do dynamic pricing. I think the first one is, like you said, we see a lot of websites which have their rate plans just written down. Like, hey, this week it's this much a week. These weeks it's so much.
Yeah.
I think by writing that down, you're kind of locking yourself. And for example, if you do it in a calendar where you can update it or you can change it, either manually or by a system. So either you have a dynamic pricing system or you just change your prices manually based on sporting events, the weather, whatever. I think dynamic pricing has very little downside when done right, of course, because you don't want to make the room twice as expensive and then not get any bookings.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of, especially new business owners, also undervalue their room maybe and expect less.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a nice room in Paris, for example. A lot of people, they undervalue how much people, or how they underestimate how many people actually will pay a lot of money for a certain.
To pay that, yeah.
There's always a market.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you can also ask the question. Let's say you do 150 a night, and you get a lot of bookings, and then you up it to 200, but you get a little less bookings.
Mm-hmm.
Will you still break even, or will you make less money because you ask more per booking? So you need less bookings to make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And less bookings is less headaches in terms of how many people, how many times you have to clean up, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I think pricing is not only about making money; it's also about like a headspace.
Yeah. Also, it's a bunch of market analysis, and especially knowing your target audience, because sometimes you understand. Yeah, it's somebody that's looking for a place, but sometimes it's even deeper than that. Remember, we had a decent amount of leads and kind of property owners that have houses somewhere in the forest or in the mountains, but they never really thought about the fact that they can open up more channels to retreat and like kind of yoga enthusiasts, like all of that stuff, because people are willing to pay more for that kind of
For
experience.
certain trips.
Yeah. So from all of this kind of research and prior experience, how much do you think property owners can expect in terms of percentage? What's an adequate percentage with kind of like revenue accumulation?
I think that's hard to say. I think it depends on where your listing is, because let's say, like I said, you're in the heart of Paris, you will get booked because you're in the heart of Paris. People are going to go to Paris. But let's say you have a house somewhere in the mountains. If you make it a lot more expensive, maybe guests who came before will think, oh, it's way more expensive, we'll pick something else.
Yeah.
I think it's really sensitive compared to like busier places. I think dynamic pricing doesn't really have a certain percentage it adds. I think it depends really heavily on location and also the person running it. Because if you use dynamic pricing, for example, to lower your prices to get more occupancy, like I said, the same formula, but then the other way around.
Yeah.
You lower occupancy, but you get more occupancy, but you get less money per booking. Maybe you'll have way more occupancy, but you'll be way more busy managing that single property.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to say. Then you run into issues with cleaning and maintenance because there's more.
I think dynamic pricing is not only for revenue. So like you asked the percentage, I don't think you should aim for a percentage with dynamic pricing. Of course, you should aim for more money, because who doesn't want more money? But I think the goal is not necessarily to make more money. I think the goal is to make your booking accessible to the amount of guests you'd like.
Yeah.
So either increasing occupancy or lowering occupancy, and also to experiment and see, hey, where's the golden standard for my pricing range in the high season, in the low season, during Christmas, during the Formula One, whatever.
Yeah, so have this adjustability kind of and find your, I wouldn't say niche, but your kind of place.
I think hard coding the price, almost like setting it in stone, is not good. Because if you set it in stone and it changes, it will always be like, oh, the price is lower, the price is higher. You can always do like discounts, etc. I think dynamic pricing is very important. I think setting it in stone is almost never a good option.
Yeah, I agree. It's absolutely true.
And the dynamic pricing within Domits is it's not ready in a way we'd ship it to customers. Like we're still working on it. Yeah. But if you compare it to, for example, let's say booking.com, let's say Airbnb, they show a calendar with prices varying per day. Like they don't have the same price for a week. Yeah. They have, let's say, 150 on Tuesday, and then it could be 170 on Wednesday.
Well, even though it's in the works, right? The whole kind of dynamic pricing in terms of the system, but if we go kind of baseline level, we could, as Domits, provide it as a service to people. So if people are looking to get more kind of revenue and dive into market analysis and what's adequate and what's appropriate for that specific market, specific property, specific kind of location, then we can always do that. And then it would be even more supported and even better when it's an actual feature.
I think for now you can just easily per night select the price, lower it in weekends, higher it in weekends, add discounts more easily. Yeah. I think it's still like setting it in stone kind of, but it's easier to adjust.
Yeah, for sure. You have to start somewhere. Right?
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, you have any more questions?
To be honest, since we were talking about like the features and the systems, right? It would be more automation at some point. So, for example, if we use some of the AI that would be predicting certain trends of the prices, would you say how important it is for implementation of AI specifically, and then how much oversight should it have?
I think AI in dynamic pricing is definitely usable. It depends how far you want to go. Do you want to get the perfect price? Like, do you want to squeeze as much money out of your customers, or do you want to keep it human and maybe add some discounts, add some, I think if you use AI for example, market research, looking at how expensive are places in the same area, how much occupancy do they get, and then determining based on that, throwing it in a big formula, getting the perfect price. Sure, you'll make maybe more money, but I think it's very important to keep it human as well. So I think AI should definitely be used to do market research and to compare your listing to others, because that's the easiest way.
Yeah.
It's the quickest way. But I think it's more important to just keep it human and keep it in touch,
But it would be quite useful for trend analysis.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You could definitely throw all your data into...
Yeah, so it's a useful tool, like with everything nowadays, but then don't overdo it.
Definitely. I think the human level should still be...
Yeah. We should respect our own kind of abilities.
I think AI should just be used as an extension, to help, and not necessarily to take over your work. Because as a property manager, I think you'd still want to have the grip on your planning, on your pricing. You don't want to just let an AI loose and it will just up the prices by 100, So I think it's good to maybe add AI automation, but not too far.
Yeah, it's like drinking silly juice. If you have one silly juice, you're good to go. But then if you overdo it,
that's true. You get silly.
Yeah, you get too silly. Well, on that silly note,
will it be 6 in a row? That's the question.
Oh, you'll see. Yeah. Thank you for listening, as always, and
we'll come back to this topic, I think. When we have more on dynamic pricing, we'll definitely come back.
Absolutely.
In terms of features, etc.
Yeah, and then you can always check out the product updates videos and demos.
We just uploaded the first one.
Oh, yeah.
To give you a better idea of where Domits currently is.
And it's quite thorough, so
definitely
take a look. Well,
all right.
See you around.
Thank you, Dan. Have a good day.
Likewise.